let's now bring in our reporter, Khayelihle Khumalo. Khaya, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the agenda.
Well, thank you so much indeed, Simpier. So obviously it's a plethora of issues that are expected to be explored by the two leaders. Like you did allude, it's been preceded by quite a number of meetings from the senior officials to the foreign affairs ministers. So there are quite a number of areas of cooperation ranging from economic development to areas of defense and security, especially because we know that South Africa is one of those contributing countries in terms of the troops with the current SADC mission that is currently deployed in Cabo Delgado. So they have been able to make inroads in dealing with insurgency. It's been a massive challenge for Mozambique. So we expect quite a detailed report to that effect, but also revitalizing a number of agreements that have been signed. You know that South Africa is quite a very pivotal player in terms of contribution of Mozambican economy. You have over 300 South African companies that are based in Mozambique. You look at so many sectors, from banking sector to hospitality industry and many other really key sectors. But also, most importantly, it was quite very clear when the foreign affairs ministers met yesterday that South Africa and Mozambique really do have a lot in common. You look at the cultural affinities, the geographical proximity, and many other aspects as well.
Well, any other international issues we can expect the leaders to thresh out? I know that the big story internationally is the Russian incursion on Ukraine, and we know that South Africa and Mozambique are just some of the countries which abstained from voting against Russia. So do we expect any developments with regards to what the leaders would say about what led to South Africa and Mozambique maintaining their positions on Russia?
Well, undoubtedly, Simpier, that's one of the very main international issues that the leaders will be exploring, just apart from the continental issues. Like you just said, these two countries abstained when a motion that was presented before the UN General Assembly really calling for Russia to be reprimanded for the invasion of Ukraine. So Maputo and Pretoria said the motion really, or the resolution, was not sufficient in terms of allowing for the parties to have engagement as opposed to the escalation of hostilities. But also, apart from that, they've been very categorical in saying that the United Nations Security Council is a very primary structure that must be very instrumental in making sure that Kyiv and Moscow are able to find each other and be able to resolve their differences. And it was very clear also when Minister Pandor was speaking here yesterday, where she made it very clear that South Africa and Mozambique are very concerned about the current situation in Ukraine, calling for the dialogue between Moscow and Kyiv, but also really just emphasizing the issue now of the humanitarian disaster, where we've seen the displacement of so many people, but also, more importantly, Simpier, because we saw yesterday President Ramaphosa had a telephonic conversation with President Putin. So we'll try and understand as to how did that conversation go, especially South Africa and Russia. They are BRICS members, but also in the context of Mozambique, Russia and Mozambique are very close. You look at some point, as part of fighting insurgency, there were quite a number of Russian paramilitary mercenaries that were essentially hired to try and augment and bolster the mission of SADC and, of course, Rwandan troops in terms of repelling the terror attacks.
Now, Khayelihle, the overall trends and patterns of economic linkages between South Africa and Mozambique reflect, two fundamental dynamics of the past. One of which is the dominant role of the minerals energy complex of South Africa in shaping the economic complex or economic architecture of the country, and the absorption of the Mozambican economy as part of a much stronger dynamic process of capital accumulation in South Africa. So in terms of the intra-country economic linkages between those two countries, do we anticipate an augmentation of that process and trying to open up the chains and open up the systems of trade between South Africa and Mozambique?
So the potential is quite enormous, Simpio. You know, you go back to centuries, a number of decades, where South Africa, where the mining sector used to be one of the very key sectors, and quite a number of Mozambicans as well, the miners will just come to our shores and be part and parcel of the work around the sector. But also, you have now quite a number of projects. You look at the Maputo corridor just along the N4 that is linking South Africa, Mozambique and the Kingdom of Eswatini. So these are some of the projects really that will be explored, especially because there's also a very clear emphasis that with COVID-19, the two economies really took a knock. And when you look at the trade between the two countries, there was a drop in 2020, given the very unintended consequences precipitated by some of the measures that were implemented by the leaders. So now this is a very good opportunity with, of course, the cases of COVID-19 really on the decline, the downward trend that we're seeing. So now the leaders are looking at how can they revitalize these ties. But also, it's always fascinating when you talk about Mozambique because South Africa calls it a strategic partner. You look at the large amount of gas reserves that Mozambique does have, albeit it's been really affected by the presence of the insurgents in the northern parts of the country. But it's also a very good location where Mozambique is in terms of trade with the continent, with South Africa, with the Middle East and many other parts of the world. And South Africa here really comes handy with all the expertise that are available here.
All right, Khayelihle, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll chat to you later. Khayelihle Khumalo is in Pretoria, wherein President Cyril Ramaphosa is hosting his Mozambican counterpart, Filipe Nyusi, as part of the binational commission.